Here it is.
Okay.
Never mind.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to Stronger Together, collaboration for a progressive food system. My name is Haley. I am with an organization, Food Rescue US. It is an honor to be moderating this panel among such heavy hitters, and I'm excited for them to introduce themselves and their stories. But first, a brief introduction. We have Aubrey Alvarez, a food systems consultant, Paddy Iyer, executive director at Daily Bowl in Alameda, California, and Don Plummer, director of Pennsylvania Food Policy Council. While we are all talking, we would love to hear from those in the audience. And if you could introduce yourself, where you're coming from, and your favorite fruit, we would love to hear from you. And actually, the same for the panelists when you introduce yourself. If you can tell us your favorite fruit, we'd love to hear it.
All right. Well, I'm Aubrey Alvarez, and this is actually the second time that I'm actually speaking not as the executive director and co-founder of Eat Greater Des Moines. That's what I had been doing for the last 10 years, but I'm excited to be in a new space that I don't actually know what it is yet, but I'm getting to spend time in a lot of spaces with a lot of people, kind of putting what I've been doing and what I've learned over the last 10 years running a food rescue nonprofit and trying to share that as far and wide as possible so that we can get as much food to as many people and in many places as possible. And if I was a fruit, I would say I'm a dragon fruit because one, I think they're beautiful and I love them and they're very tasty, but they look a little much on the outside, but when you open it up, they're very sweet and tender. That's kind of like me. I think a lot of people see me on the outside and they're like, ooh, she's scary. I get called aggressive a lot. I'm passionate and I feel like dragon fruits are my jam.
I love it. Thank you, Aubrey. Yes, Paddy.
My name is Paddy Iyer. I'm the executive director of Daily Bowl. We are a food recovery organization in Alameda County, California. Love all fruits except kiwi fruits. I don't know why. I just don't like it. So there you go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dawn Plummer, as of 7 months ago, the director of the newly established Pennsylvania Food Policy Council, which I'll share more about later. I'd say my favorite fruit are the blackberries that are finally producing in my backyard after several years of being in the ground.
Great answers. Aubrey, you must be a Scorpio because I get that same feedback.
I'm a Taurus, so I'm also, not only am I aggressive, but I'm persistent as well.
Love it. So that's how you've gotten to where you are today.
That's how I'm here.
So please, Aubrey, tell us more.
Yeah, well, I can't say like kids, but I'm just most excited the opportunities that are really possible there with community refrigerators. So I love getting to talk about that. And I was really struggling with what slides to put together and how to talk about collaboration for a progressive food system. So instead, I've been doing a training and I'm trying to learn how to use my stories to explain, kind of where I'm coming from. And I figured, you know what? This is a group of people who are caring and give each other grace. So if I'm going to practice, it's going to be with you because also I can't see any of your faces. So that helps me as well. So my story for everyone thinking, for as much I think is, like I said, people I'm identified and shared as, aggressive or, just usually aggressive is what it is. And that usually I think too, a lot of times comes with competition, that there's, a lot of competition. And I will say, so growing up, I grew up in small town, Southwest Iowa. Both my parents were coaches, high school coaches. So from growing up, I've always grown up in a team. I've just, my parents were both, my dad was what I remember, he was a lot of coaches, but what I remember most is he coached high school boys basketball for like 40 years. So most of my childhood, because I'm only 43. And he also coached boys and girls tennis for a really long time. My mom was the high school cheerleading coach. She was a third grade teacher. She also coached high school tennis and with my dad for a while as well. And my mom also was a third grade teacher. So I feel like I've always grown up in community and been part of a team. So, I was lucky that I had a ton of amazing babysitters, because that's a benefit of being a high school teacher and coach, I think. But when there wasn't childcare, I came with, or my sister came with. So I was always around, and seeing how teams practice together. And my mom taught aerobics. So, I got to go, and I always loved the feelings of doing hard things together. Because I will also say, so you would think my dad moved from New York to Central College. He came to Iowa for college to play tennis. So he's good at tennis, and that's an individual sport. Imagine everyone's surprise when not only am I not athletic, I also don't care about winning. It's really, I think it's a superpower. I don't think my dad ever thought that was a superpower, because really what I learned is I love being with other people. I have FOMO. Yes, that's it. And I also have ADHD, and didn't know that until a few years ago. So I was never medicated. So I feel like now too, when you're not medicated and you're just in a small town, going to practice and going to work out with my friends was how I was building community. One, it helped my brain. But two, who likes to do hard things by themselves? No one likes to run line drills. I don't like it, but I love complaining about it with my friends. And so I tell you all of that because that's really how I've come into all of this work. I have never seen any of this work as something that I or any organization could do by themselves, ever. When I started, it was me as a full-time employee and my co-founder and colleague, Linda Gobberdeal, as the part-time employee. We knew direct service was not something we were going to be able to do. But what I think I've also brought into this work is always being able to see how much we have. It's shocking to me, always been shocking to me. That's why I didn't know anything about food rescue when I started in April 2013. Nothing. I just knew that it didn't make sense. And so that's what I kept asking about. And then as I learned more, and that's why I have a sign up, Maya Angelou's Know Better, Do Better. Once I knew better, it didn't make any sense to me that we wouldn't just do better. And so that's how I've always approached the work is, well, once people know better, they'll do better and see everybody and everything as a potential partner. That's how I've always been. That's why, I want my team to win, but my parents, their favorite story and picture is when I was a junior in high school, I decided to play volleyball instead of swim because I had been swimming, but that meant I had to drive 45 minutes and I wasn't good. It's not like I was going to meets. I was just going because I like swimming and having someone tell me what to do so I can yell back at them and be like, I don't want to. So that's why I work out. So I decided to do volleyball so I could be around my friends more. And mind you, I know I'm not good at volleyball. I am 5'10", but my role was back row specialist because I'm not coordinated. I appreciate spiking. I don't understand how it happens. And because I played tennis, I could spot serve. So, but I would show up every day. I will work hard. I knew that my role wasn't to go in and win for the team. My role was to be the positive one. My role was to keep people's spirits up. My role was to be the one when we're doing line drills to be like, oh, this is the worst, and say what everyone else is thinking. That's just been my role. But I always felt like I was part of the team. So when we won, and I say we, second in state, my high school year, my senior year, the picture of it, and it's probably still in our high school, everyone is in tears. Everyone's in tears. And I'm like, this has been the best. It was an amazing experience. We got to stay in a hotel by ourselves. I got to sleep with my friends. We were on TV. I wasn't, but people I knew were on TV. That's who I am. I take joy in everybody else's success. So it has boggled my mind when we approach any of this work for the last 10 years, the only way Eat Greater Des Moines and any of the work we were able to accomplish was because of partnerships and collaboration. No one is doing anything alone. And the more we pretend and keep putting things in silos and acting like, oh, well, because you do work in the local food space, that's the only thing you do. And that's how we're going to organize you. Whereas for me and how I was approaching the work is it's food. So I don't care if it's coming from a local farmer, if it's coming from a grocery store, the infrastructure and the needs are the same. Hence why we can share refrigerated trucks. That's why we can share fleets. That's why we can share all of this, and I think what was really disheartening and what broke my heart and ultimately was why I decided to leave the nonprofit space was I really hoped that this perceived competition would go away. That if I just stuck around for long enough and was like, it is possible to do this together. It is possible to share. I always heard when we didn't have a warehouse, like, well, could we, what if we just shared? And everyone's like, oh, liability. Oh, I can't. Like, what liability? Because we're the insurance capital. I live in Iowa, in Des Moines, Iowa. Like, we have insurance everywhere. There's got to be a way we can figure this out. So same thing with vehicles and fleets. I don't want to buy a whole fleet if another nonprofit partner has one with people that could use the money. Like, why can't we just do this together? So that's really, I can't ever look back at one of those partnerships and collaborations because that was my whole career. That's been my whole career. And that's all I want to do moving forward. So while I'm not at Eat Greater Des Moines anymore, what I'm excited about and what I've built over, that's how, getting to come and meet the 412 Food Rescue Team when we were part of the 2019 ReFed nonprofit food recovery accelerator, I felt like we won just getting to be in it. Just getting to be a part of it was a win in my book. Then I got to hang out and learn from all of these amazing people who care as much as I do about people and food waste. That's a win. So how, that's really why. And at that point, Eat Greater Des Moines, our work looked different. But because I met 412 Food Rescue and I met Rescuing Leftover Cuisine and Seeds That Feed and all these amazing people, my network and my knowledge base grew farther. And I will say right now, I love reading. I hate reading to learn on purpose. I don't know what it is. It's a block. I love reading. Both my parents are teachers. But I learn, and I learned about this over the weekend. I'm a verbal processor. I learn by talking with others. None of the ideas, the community refrigerators that are probably one of the things I'm most proud of. We got to be part of launching one in December 2020. When I left, I had ordered the 80th fridge. And we did all of that without asking anyone for permission. We didn't market any of it. The only way all of that got done is because I showed up, our partners showed up. We were honest about what we knew. We were honest about what we didn't know. We agreed that we would work together. And if things go left, because they do, our first fridge had to move in a week because the city decided to make up a policy that said it could only be on religious or commercial properties. The only way we figured that out was our community. So again, the only way I feel like, to kind of wrap this up, this is the hard part of me with telling a story and why I always have slides, because I'm not good at wrapping it up, but I'm gonna. So wrapping it up, I feel like the only way through this, we have had 50 years of dysfunction within the food system. We had it was working for a bit. We broke it. And I don't want to put the people who have been in charge of the food system for the last 50 years and who have been benefiting from none of this working, because there are many nonprofits benefiting from our food system, not feeding people. I don't want them to be in charge. But the only way we're going to change it is if we all recognize collectively that we have a voice. We're good at what we do. And we want to do this for the right reasons. We are all here because I care more about people having food than I do about fundraising. That's why I'm not an executive director, because I'm not, I don't like that part. So I know that this is kind of what I saw this opportunity as. I don't know where I'm going next, but I know that I want to go with you. And even though I can't see any of you in the room, I want to go with Paddy and Don and Haley and anyone else that's there, because the only way through is together. And so that's my call. My action item is, as after this, you're like, I don't know what the hell she said. I don't know what she's doing next, because I will tell you, I don't. Email me anyway, and let's figure it out together. Because again, the only way through is together. And I know that I've been told a lot, like, you just need to give people more grace, be more patient. I'm out of it. I'm done. I have no more patience. I used it all up. So let's together figure some stuff out so that then we all don't have to go down it at the same time. We can spread it out. So that's me. I'll pass it back.
Aubrey, thank you so much for sharing and really, your own story, your own personal story. It's really special, and you have so much energy coming out of you. Like you can tell exactly how you got there, and I appreciate it. You are like the perfect person to give that type of presentation and story. Our next speaker, Paddy, will also be speaking about the power of creating a collective voice, and he has slides. If we can get those slides up on the screen.
It might help if I were to unmute myself. Surprisingly, people actually want to hear me. It is really surprising. Good morning, everybody. My name is Paddy Iyer. I'm the Executive Director for Daily Bowl. We are a food recovery organization in Alameda County. We've been in existence for close to about 9 years now, 8, 9 years. We started off doing it really small, and once as it happened for the rest of the world, once this thing called the pandemic hit, there was a glut of inventory in the marketplace, and we soon realized that we needed help. We needed more collaboration. We needed more activity within the partnerships within all the organizations in the Bay Area. So we started reaching out for like-minded partners all across the Bay Area, saying, I have stuff, you have stuff, or in the case of what Aubrey was saying, you have fleets, I don't have fleets, can we start sharing and everything? So, it was kind of a loose-knit thing, and we all started talking and collaborating together. And we met some people for lunch, and we started talking about, it's like, food recovery organizations don't really have a presence, don't really have, people don't know about what is a food recovery organization. They just know somehow at the end of the day, food gets distributed, or food is there on the distribution tables of all the food pantries and everything like that. So we just started talking, and I said, why don't we start a food recovery coalition of like-minded organizations? So what it is some of the organizations, all the nonprofits and everything, we started forming this thing called the California Food Recovery Coalition. It's a mouthful. It's seriously a mouthful. But if you want the alphabets, it's CFRC. Website doesn't exist because somebody is slacking off on building up the website, and so I do apologize for that. The next slide, please, if you don't mind. So the mission is to unite, empower, and to advance the California food recovery organizations to alleviate hunger, reduce waste, and champion sustainability. It's all about it's like I said, people don't know food recovery organizations, and when we go across the when you want to advocate, when you want to tell people about food recovery organizations, it's Aubrey can go and talk about a food recovery organization. There's Haley talking about a food recovery organization. Now it's all individual pieces talking, but here we are, a collective a coalition of food recovery organizations spreading a unified message about what we do, right? Um, the legislative body may not know what a food recovery organization is. So here we are advocating about food recovery organizations. So that's what our vision is, to advocate, to empower, to have, to provide a collective voice to everybody. May I have the next slide, please? And just in case you didn't realize, I'm nervous right now. Okay. And I'm only on 6 cups of coffee since 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm on the West Coast. Okay. So, cheers then. The California Food Recovery Coalition common goals is raise public awareness about food recovery organizations. This is really the key point, is to raise public awareness, to educate policymakers and collaborate legislative champions. We have elected officials around, and we go and talk to them. Oh, Paddy, what do you do? Oh, so I work or I'm the executive director for Daily Bowl. What is a Daily Bowl? Well, we are a food recovery organization. What is that? Right? So here you have a legislative member asking you, what is a food recovery organization? So that means that's a very start point, is we have to start educating. So Aubrey might go and talk one way, or I might go and talk another way. But here we decide, let's get together and form a unified message, advocating, championing the causes of a food recovery organization, either at the legislative body or to anybody who wants to know about it. And then so to rescue nutritious surplus food and redistribute it to homes in need and things like that. A food recovery organization, by its very definition, it could be either hyper local. They could be operating in the silo of operations of maybe a geography, or a silo of operations of maybe a specific entity or stuff that they might recover. But they are a food recovery organization, and we all get together. So may I have the next slide, please? So we started this. It really started off as a loose knit, the conversation, and we realized, the state of California, it'll really benefit with an organization, a coalition that can come through like this and champion and advocate. Because look, from here to LA, I'm giving you a very hyper, from here to Los Angeles, from San Francisco to Los Angeles is 6 hours by driving, okay, not including traffic. Whereas on the East Coast, in 6 hours, you're just driving down the coast, you've covered 6 states. So this state is huge, and there are so many organizations, small scale, big scale. You could get lost, and they need a champion. And we said, let's all get together and start forming up. So we're increasing the CFRC membership. Any food rescue organization that wants to take part, we will champion your cause. We will talk on your behalf, or we'll provide you talking points to talk to people about what an organization is all about. And may I have the next slide, please? There you go. And I think this is the key for everything, right? It's creating a safe space for food recovery organizations to meaningfully participate, develop consistent, the messaging, right? It's all about the messaging. How do you message? Plus, at the same time, food recovery organizations can help at the legislative body by, say, championing some assembly bills, by supporting some assembly bills. We're not lobbyists. It's totally different. It's just advocacy. It just standing at the corner with a bowl, preaching to the people driving across what a food recovery organization is. Heck, if you want me to stand and wave the sign, I can do that too, but I'm a little, shall we say, I could get more money that way. Anyway, so that's who the California Food Recovery Coalition is. It started off with 4 organizations. There's Daily Bowl. There is Extra Food from Marin County. So a Daily Bowl is from Alameda County. Extra Food is from Marin County. White Pony Express is from Contra Costa County. Lowe's Fishes is from Santa Clara County. So 4 counties are now getting together and talking about it. We are spreading it out, and we're slowly starting to get membership from Central County and everywhere. So we're going on. I think we're trying to do something good. And I think that's about it from my end. The next slide should just be about questions or something like that. There you go. See, um, if you have questions, keep it at the end. If you have questions, don't ask because I'm nervous.
That's so funny. Well, we'll just make sure that you're getting some real softball ones at the end. But I think you did a great job. And yes, if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A because we would love to elevate your voice, which again has been the theme between Aubrey and Paddy, is creating this elevated voice. Paddy spoke about advocacy versus legislation and also raising awareness to the folks that do have a seat at the table. And Dawn is here to present about those folks with a seat at the table. Dawn.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the invitation to join you all this afternoon. Stronger together and collaboration, those themes ring true for me in all of the work I've ever done. I come from a background of organizing and leading campaigns, and of course, embedded in human rights, the humanity of us all is what brings us together. We're all human. So that's somewhat of my background and my approach as well. Go ahead and start my slides. I'm going to share. So I've been in, as I mentioned, my role as the director of the State Food Policy Council, which is also new since March, end of February of this year. I wanted to share just a little bit of a background about food policy councils for any of you who may be unfamiliar with this kind of form of organization. Food policy councils have been around for quite a while. I know those numbers are very tiny, but I think the lowest number on that graph is 2000. So this is data from the last 25 years on this slide that shows you, the growth of food policy councils in the United States and in tribal nations are the purple. But so you see that these kinds of organizations have sort of exploded over the last 2 decades. And essentially a food policy council, as you can see here on the left, is basically creating a table for people who are impacted and lead in businesses, nonprofits, universities, government entities, advocacy organizations, conservation organizations, food rescue, food waste organizations. Anyone who has an invested stake in improving our food system ideally has a space in a food policy council conversation. And all councils are sort of very, when you say food policy council, it doesn't actually mean, sort of the commonality is that there's a table of people from across the food system, whether they're based in government, whether they're a nonprofit outside of government, whether they're, sort of an organizing group or they're sort of a professional association. They come in all shapes and sizes. They exist also at the local level. You can have one in a city, in a county, in a region, at a state level. So, the idea being that food doesn't really live in government, any specific place. It's sort of scattered all around. And with that sort of diffusion of priorities, it's hard to pull together really important strategies and impact on the system as a whole. And so that's the idea of a food policy council, is to be able to make systemic change and transform our food system for the better. Next slide, please. This is just a map. I'll sort of skip ahead to how to take action. I would suggest, if you're joining us, if you could go back one to the map. If you're joining us from anywhere across the country, there's likely a food policy council near you in your state or in your community. If not, the invitation's there to start one. But this just shows you kind of the geographic spread as of 2021. Next slide, please. The crux of the work, sort of right up the alley of stronger together and collaboration. Key concepts from my vantage point of food policy councils are that they look at the whole food system. So you have folks around the table who look very narrowly at any number of things, or they look broadly, but they're focused on one thing, or a couple of pieces of it. And the idea is that you can bring them sort of together across the system. So like, if someone really works in the recovery space, It creates space for producers and distributors to also be in the conversation to help shed light on particular challenges that everyone faces, that, you know, they may not be aware of. And obviously when you're making solutions, it's good to have sort of all angles on the challenge problem at hand. Network building is also a big part of it. Getting to know who, you know, part of what has happened with our food system as we've become, you know, as it's consolidated and sort of corporatized over the decades, we've sort of become disconnected from our food. But in that disconnection, we've also become disconnected as food systems participants, whether we're consumers, producers, again, distributors, everyone. You don't necessarily know where your food came from, how it got there, who put it there. What are those jobs like? You know, what are those people's lives like? How are farmers doing? And so when you build networks, you can build power for change and also build relationships so that you have not only sort of a conceptual understanding and support for, you know, farmers, for, you know, for example, but you also know farmers in your community and can act in solidarity with them. And then lastly is a point that's really important to me, which is building food democracy, which is building space for good food governance. Again, a lot of rules and regulations and policies exist to shape and morph our food system and at all levels of government. So that's a space that, you know, people should be able to engage in. It shouldn't be closed door conversations. There should be opportunities to get updates and weigh in on things. And that's the kind of space that food policy councils create. Next slide. So just a little bit about the Pennsylvania State Food Policy Council. We have had at the state level, around the state, we have, I don't know how many, like 12 maybe local food policy councils or Hunger Alliance type organizations. The previous governor had a food security partnership where he pulled together various agencies of government with, you know, partners across the state and growers and things to really take a look at the question of food security. And in the meantime, we had also thought that it would make sense, and we're advocating the little sort of document on the right-hand side of the screen was our document that we shared with Governor Wolf to explain what it would look like to have a food policy council, what kinds of things we would work on. And thankfully, at the very end of his administration in December of 22, he passed an executive order creating the Food Policy Council. And this is the copy of the front page of it. You can check it out. It's Executive Order 2022-05. But it basically lays out the structure of the council and calls for a director, which is a position that I'm filling, and puts out some of the priorities and work of the council. Next slide, please. So essentially the main three, essentially reasons that the council was established, laid out in the executive order, is to evaluate issues facing our food system in Pennsylvania, and to develop and implement strategies to improve food security, nutrition, and reduce food waste. So that's an important, it's been lifted up as an important nuance of our Food Policy Council, that we actually do call out food waste and have significant work that needs to be done on the policy side. Coordination, we coordinate across 8 different agencies, state agencies in Pennsylvania who serve on our council. And those are secretary level appointments and their designees. And we report directly to the governor. So it's a meaningful conversation with meaningful outlets for our recommendations. And then lastly, I think also important, we facilitate collaboration across the public and private sectors. And, do that work in such a way that is intended to support food sovereignty, which I think is also another really important aspect. Food sovereignty is essentially, the people's right to create a food system that nourishes them in the ways that they would like to see be the case. So that's the primary sort of reasons behind or functions of the council. Next slide. This is sort of how I boil down our mission statement, that we seek to evaluate, coordinate, communicate, and catalyze policy action that advances healthy, equitable, sustainable, and fair food systems for all Pennsylvanians. Next slide. So this is the actual makeup of our council. Again, we're somewhat young, but you'll see in the, I thought it was really crafty when I pulled our state logos for our different agencies, but that likely means absolutely nothing to a national audience, especially. So those seats are made up of the secretaries from Agriculture, the Department of Aging, Labor and Industry, Department of Environmental Protection, Health, Human Services, and oh goodness, Community and Economic Development. And then obviously my seat as the director. And then we have an advisory committee that meets along with our council. And these are statewide leaders across all sectors of the food system. And you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a food waste seat, and that's currently filled by a farmer who uses his farm waste to create an energy source. But putting this, sharing the broad perspectives that we have around the table shows that we have a lot of expertise and a lot of personal lived experience and professional experience to bring to bear as we put together our recommendations for the state. Next slide, please. This is the sort of who we are, the specifics of it. You can also find this on our website if you Google Pennsylvania Food Policy Council. But you also see there are Food Policy Council reps around our table. We have a federal agency representation with the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service and others. There's sort of a lot to take in there, but just to show there's a real diversity. We also have a seat for immigration and workforce topics, and we have a leader from the Movement of Immigrant Leaders of Pennsylvania with a very unique perspective and important conversations around immigration and workforce issues in agriculture in particular, but in the food system at large. And there's others here as well. Just a fantastic group of folks. Next slide, please. I think this is my take action. So, the one thing I would just, the three things I sort of came up with as to-dos from here is always dig into the root causes, particularly of food waste. We want to reduce that source reduction. We don't want to just be sort of a place for our industrialized food system to have a dumping ground for their tax benefits. We know that we really need to, with the priorities of climate and hunger and all of these things, we really need to know why these problems are occurring in the first place. And so therefore our solutions will be directed right to the source. Secondly, again, I encourage you to reach out to your local food policy council. And the Johns Hopkins Food Policy Networks is a great organization that has done a lot of support does a lot of things to support the Food Policy Council network. And then lastly, I'm always happy to connect, and please feel free to check out our website to learn more. We are also housed in the Department of Agriculture, so our Facebook and Twitter and newsletters are linked to that department, and my contact information is there as well. And I welcome any questions and conversation we have from here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for presenting, all of you. I think there were a lot of great takeaways. I want to give emphasis to the chat. So Paddy, there are two themes really generating in the chat. One, a question that quite a few people have is, how do people join the California Food Recovery Coalition?
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for asking how to join. I wasn't able to get into the chat, so Patrick just entered my information. And if you can't see the chat, just click on my name. I changed my name to include my email address and my phone number. So that's a workaround situation. So please feel free to reach out to me. Would love to connect, would love to help spread the message. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Paddy. The other theme in the chat is something that I battle with myself, operating a food recovery organization. And I know Aubrey and Paddy, you have these experiences too. And Paddy, by design, your coalition was put together to create a collective voice for grassroots organizations, oftentimes coming up against national food bank networks. And I'm interested. This is the topic of conversation is collaboration, building community, and how do we, as people who want to bring a voice to our messaging and to organizations like ourselves, balance an interest of wanting to collaborate with, also essentially creating these exclusive groups that do not by design include other types of programming. And I'm really interested to hear from Paddy and Aubrey on that.
Man, I only had 7 cups of coffee and you're asking me this question.
I've
Okay.
got lots of thoughts about it.
But-
Should they all be recorded and sent to the universe? Probably
But-
not. But are they going to? Also, probably.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But anyway, that is a question that deserves to be asked, right? Inclusivity and exclusivity. I can use an analogy if you want me to do that, and you can understand where we're coming from. The first things first, intrinsically, nonprofit as a definition is a nonprofit. There's nothing here that's about domination or global dominations or whatever. In that case, we could be Amazons or Facebooks or whatever. But nevertheless, I just spoke about coffee, right? I just spoke about coffee. The national chain is Starbucks. Everybody knows there's a Starbucks. You drive around the world, heck, right outside in the biggest castle in Budapest, there's a Starbucks. But anyway, you drive around, there's a Starbucks. But you want to support a mom and pop, and you're trying to figure out where the local mom and pop is. You do a Google map or you do a Yelp and everything. But you see, there is no visibility of those mom and pops coming across, right? If you just need the cup of coffee, you're in a hurry, there's a local Starbucks. But you want to go spend some time, sit down, support the environment, you find the thing. So you're getting your coffee somewhere. But what kind of a coffee do you really need? Right? That's where we are coming from, is we are alleviating the voices of these local grassroots organizations and saying, we are also doing work on the ground, but we're just not visible, and here we are making it more visible. And I hope that answered the question.
Paddy, I love your response because it is so much nicer than how I have been approaching this question, because I have just recently been kind of, likening. I will say when I started in this work, I used to work at United Way. I believe in the collective voice of the people doing the work to lift up and say what's really happening. I think for too long, we've allowed the message to become about the donors and the funders. Like, we're just supposed to be so grateful that you hoarded all this wealth and then trickled some down onto the rest of us that are trying to actually make sure all of our friends and neighbors and communities have food. But you're the heroes here? Okay, that's cool. So I feel like that whole system has skewed. Instead of fighting for the mission, a lot of these organizations are fighting for the money, and they want to stay in control and stay in power. I have a really hard time when we talk about root causes, not understanding why some of these really well-established, really well-funded, Feeding America raised $3 billion last year, that they can't figure out how to fix this. My organization had no money. We had no resources. But what we had were other passionate people who wanted to work together. I can't imagine sitting on billions of dollars in resources and still having the audacity to ask for more money all the time, not give it to any of the groups actually doing the work in the communities, the local coffee shops, and then actively getting in the way of progress because it challenges your business model. All of those things are hard truths to me, but the fact that we are never allowed to talk about it in a meaningful way. I don't think anyone here has come in and said it's us versus them. No, it's not us versus them. It is all of us trying to work together. And the only organization that I have ever seen doing us versus them is Feeding America. Anytime they talk about food rescue, it is, if you're not working with us, you're not safe. They're not trained. They don't know what they're doing. I would like to say in my most generous self, they're not doing it to be malicious, like they really care, but also, is that why? Because I can't imagine, an experience I've had here is we have convenience stores that have all this food, highly perishable food that they needed. We started working with our Feeding America food bank. They covered as many stores as they could with what their agency enabled model. We covered the ones that didn't work. They're in the suburbs, they're too far away, they didn't have enough people. That's my ideal situation. You go to your network of people, you ask them first, and then we are happy to cover the rest, because then we could pick up all of that food and take it to places that aren't part of that usual system. Our Feeding America Food Bank CEO reached out to the CEO of that company, told them that they wouldn't get their tax benefit anymore if they continued to work with my organization. And that's not true. But when the CEO of a Feeding America food bank, a $30 million organization, tells you this, why wouldn't you believe them? So I understand why they believe that. The problem was they weren't going to pick up that food. If my organization and our volunteers and our drivers weren't picking up that food, it was going to go in the garbage. So the fact that the CEO of a Feeding America food bank would publicly be okay with food going in the garbage because her organization didn't get to tell people where to pick it up and where to go, we're not on the same team. We're not on the same team. And I'm sick of everyone assuming we're on the same team when we're not. You don't get to partner with Feeding America. It's a dictatorship. You either do it or you don't. And I'm sick of dictatorships. I think what you really want is true collaboration, and that's a give and take. That means we all either go together or we all fall together. But we can't continue this. We only are allowed to talk glowingly about Feeding America while the rest of us and our system is drowning. So I don't even know if I answered the question, but I had a lot of feelings.
Yeah, we can tell. They're good feelings, and I think they're probably shared by a lot of people in this group. And I appreciate that this was a safe place, to share. And to also come up with some solutions and some creative ideas about new collaborative opportunities. And Aubrey, to what you said, the point of that is to build community. That is why we were all in the business to do so, using food as a community builder. So thank you to the panelists for joining us today. And thank you to everyone in the audience. And thank you to the conference organizers. We're all very happy to be here.
Well, my friends, have a wonderful afternoon. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Haley, for a wonderful moderation. And Aubrey and Dawn, pleasure to meet you. And to the invisible audience to us, have a wonderful Friday. Thank you. Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.